Special guest in conversation this week. To say he is successful as an author would be an understatement. He has sold some 270 million copies of his books. He's known ups and downs. He's very successful at raising money for charity. He's survived a cancer scare, and he's still doing the books, although surprisingly, in the 5th Clifton Chronicle, which is Mightier Than the Sword, I thought it would finish with 5. He's contracted for 7, and he will deliver 7, won't you, Jeffrey Archer?
Well, the problem is, as you say that, Steve, I did contract for 5, but the problem was that Harry Clifton and Emma were at the end of book 5 about 50 years old, and I couldn't push them over a precipice and kill them. So I went back to the publisher and said, I'd always thought it was going to be 5, but my heroes and my hero and my heroine are only 50, so it's 7. What you have in front of you is the 5th.
Yeah.
And that ends in about 1970.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wanted to go on.
And so you are contracted for 2 more, one in 2016, one in 2017.
Correct. It's going to be 7, and actually it genuinely will be, because people are writing from all over the world now saying, come on, Jeffrey, is it 8 or 9? Please tell me. And I'm now able to say, yes, I am confident, because I've written book 6, I'm confident that it will be 7.
The one thing that you're good at is storytelling. The one thing that if you say to somebody, Jeffrey Archer, they'll go, he's a page turner. You have to, when it gets to the end of the book, when's the next one out? When's the next one out? People want to know this. You're very good at playing that game of cliffhanging, aren't you?
I think, to be fair, that is genuinely a God-given gift. I don't play the piano. I don't sing a song. I'm not a ballet dancer. I'm a storyteller.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, and I'm off. And I do think that's a bit of luck. I work hard. I work damned hard. But I often think, if you look at my wife, who's a truly remarkable woman, she's got to becoming a dame on having a wonderful brain and working very hard indeed. God gave me one strange gift to tell a story, and it just never stops. I assume, I get up each day and I think it'll stop today, it'll stop. It can't go on, it can't. And every single day something comes up. I'm very, very lucky.
And you're still doing it at this age where I thought...
What do you mean at this age?
Well,
You're not exactly a youngster yourself.
It is
You've
true.
been on here for about 100 years.
103.
I mean, don't give me that 103 years. Sorry, 103
But it is true, though, isn't it? I mean, I speak to a lot of very successful authors, many of them not as successful as you, and they get to that, and you think, what is it that drives people? What is it that makes people want to do it? You work a pattern, don't you? You have a sort of, you do 2 hours here, 2 hours there, 2 hours there, and you're very disciplined, you're very regimented for doing it. And I'm assuming the storytelling came from being a child. I can tell a story, but I couldn't put it down into print. I don't have that gift of being able to write things down. I can tell people about it, but I can't write it.
You're quite right. It is a discipline. I work from 6 to 8, 10 to 12, 2 to 4, 6 to 8 when I'm away writing. Each book is about 14 drafts, takes about 1,000 hours. So it is damned hard work, as you say. The storytelling is just there, and I'm very lucky. Now, let's go on to the age thing, because you're getting a bit cranky yourself.
Actually, I've realised I am at my age.
I'm 75.
Yeah.
What drives me? Certainly not money. I haven't needed money since Cain and Abel. That took care of that.
Yes, what was that? What was the advance?
That's 35 years ago, over 3 million,
Over
35 years ago.
yes.
No, that isn't what drives me. It's I do want to get better and better and sell more and more. The money is honestly irrelevant.
What a fortunate position to be in.
It's a very privileged position.
It gives you that opportunity to either do it or not do it. And if you choose to do it, you're doing it because you love doing it. Because, as you say, the money isn't... You don't need the money. You've got enough money to live and see out the rest of your life.
And my children and my grandchildren.
Very comfortably.
So the answer to that is I love it.
Yeah.
I enjoy the writing. If the stories stopped coming, if the Clifton Chronicles weren't moving forward, I've always thought, what would you do, Jeffrey, if the sales had dropped between book 3 and book 4 and you were bored? Would you say, sorry, I'm not going to finish the Clifton Chronicles, I'm moving on, or I'm going to live in the Bahamas, to hell with it? No, I've been very privileged. The last book, the book we're talking about, is 23% higher sales than the book before. So in a way, I'm driven.
That's what drives you, the figures.
Yeah, it does. It's
Yes.
when people. I came in this morning and I was greeted with the lady who takes care of me with a load of emails wanting to be answered immediately. It's a very great privilege that all these people are in touch with you, all these people are reading the book, and I never, never, never underestimate it. I consider myself very lucky.
Did the internet change anything? Because I think that with the advent of the internet, and I'm old enough and have been here long enough, as you correctly point out, to remember when it was all done on typewriters, and if you wanted reference books, you went to the library and you took a reference book out and you found it. Now, I type in Jeffrey Archer on Google, up comes 300 million pieces.
Yep. It has changed everything. Cain and Abel was written 35 years ago, 14 drafts, and my secretary literally typed it 14 times. Now you press buttons, do everything, do the changes. It's all done immediately. If I say to my secretary, can you just give me the years of Lyndon Johnson when he was president, please? What was the year Margaret Thatcher had the problem with the strikes and the rebellion down in Wapping? There. Immediately. You're quite right. You went off to a library, you got out the books, you set to work. The whole game has changed completely. And even more for me, in those days, Cain and Abel, I did a 21-city tour of the United States of America, starting in New York, ending in Los Angeles, going on programs like this all over the United States. Now I put out a tweet that goes to 30,000 people. I put out my Facebook, goes to 250,000. I do my blog, it goes to 4 million people. No. And they've worked out that as long as I'm working on the blog, the Facebook and the Twitter, I don't even need to go to the United States. No. Because if I went to Los Angeles today, I'd draw about 1,000 people. Why fly to Los Angeles to draw 1,000 people when you can talk to 4 million every morning?
Yes. Oh, I think that technology in our lifetime has moved on. People used to joke about mobile phones and say, only for yuppies, you know. And now I've got godchildren at 11 who've got mobile phones they can keep in contact, and they know how to operate it, whereas I struggle with the video recorder.
Well, wait a moment. Mary and I were in Italy last week, and she was buying some clothes and I was bored out of my mind. And I came out of the shop and there are 2 children sitting on the pavement with iPads, and a father as bored as I was. So I pointed at these 2 children who were going tap, 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 tap. How old is that one? I said, pointing to the youngest. 4 years old. Yes. And he had an iPad.
Yes.
So what's it going to be like in 20 years' time?
Well, we're never going to be around to find out, are we?
I am. Speak for yourself.
Actually, do you know, I think you might be. I think you might be, because you're now, you get to that stage, and I don't know whether or not it was after the cancer scare that you suddenly realise that there is a life expectancy, that all of a sudden, you know, you start thinking, wait a minute, it's all going wrong in here, something's happening, we all do it, and then you start thinking, right, I'm going to change what I eat, I'm going to change what I drink, maybe gone are the days of the Krug and the pies and things like that. You've got to start watching it and being careful, because you've suddenly realised that you quite like life. It's quite nice.
It did. You're quite right. When the cancer came along, when I had the prostate cancer, you're quite right. I woke up, and I would say to anyone listening, any man listening to this program, particularly any black men, because you'll have seen the figures more recently, if you're over 50, just check with your doctor. Ask for a check on your PSA, because if it's under 1%, as it is for 70% of people, you're fine, forget it. But if it's shot up, get done, because you will die, and this little message might save your life.
Yes, and it's a blood test. It's a simple blood test.
Simple blood test.
You know,
have you had yours, Steve?
I spend my life, Jeffrey, having blood tests. I'm afraid I'm a diabetic, so I get blood tests all the time. So they're always checking for things. So that I quite like. I hate having my blood taken. I mean, I'm really rubbish. I hate it. But on mine, they always do 3 syringefuls. Yeah, we are awful.
Well, basically.
But then, now that you've been through these procedures, now I bet if you have a little twinge, you think I'll book the doctor in.
Yes, I think you don't take those risks any longer. I'm in the gym 3 times a week.
Wow.
I'm very careful on my diet. I drink very little, but then I never have. But 75, you've got to assume you might be dead tomorrow morning. I'm expecting to live a little longer. There are still things to do.
I don't think God's quite ready for you just yet, is he?
Well, you never know. It's quite... the amount of funerals I'm attending now.
Well, no, that comes with the territory. That comes with the territory. I don't think you have to go to them. They won't know if you're there. I don't think it makes it. They're not going to go, wait, we did a check.
If they ask you to make the address, Steve.
Oh, they want you to do the eulogy
They have to do the eulogy.
It is true, though, and you do start thinking about your own mortality. As you get a little bit older, and if you have had a few scares, you do start thinking about it. I think about it a lot of the time.
And I've started reading the obituary columns, and I'm very pleased when someone's 93, 94, 95. Yes!
Yes, thank God. Thank God. Listen, we'll take a very quick break. More from Jeffrey Archer. Mightier Than the Sword is out in paperback, and there are 2 more to come. How far he is down the line with them, we shall find out in a moment. Special guest in conversation, Jeffrey Archer. I dread talking to former politicians. And then I suddenly realised at the ripe old age of 39 plus VAT that in fact politicians were the easiest people to talk to because they wanted to talk about themselves. And it didn't matter whether they were Jeffrey Archer or anybody else. They were what's commonly known as the old Kenneth Williams penny in a slot. You would ask one question, 25 minutes later, you'd still be sitting there waiting for them to breathe. And you have been both sides of the coin. You have been that politician. I remember mayoral hopeful. I remember all of these things. I mean, you've crammed it all in a life. You know, as I say, we've had some very good bits. We've had a few down bits,
sure.
But then you've capitalised on those as well. You've been quite clever, really. You've not sort of sat back on your laurels, have you?
Well, I say to the young, because a lot of people talk to me about this. I say to the young, for God's sake, don't look back. If you make a mistake, be aware you've made a mistake, made a fool of yourself, brush yourself down, and get on with it. The worst thing to do is spend the next 10 years saying, would have been all right if only. Forget it. Get on with life. And so I'm still fascinated by politics. I'm not deeply involved. Writing is my first and main love, and my charity auctioneering, which I enjoy so much. But I'm still interested, and I'm following, for example, the Labour Party leadership at the moment.
Yes.
It's like a novel. It's like reading a novel. And I'm not
sure if it's a good novel or a bad novel at the moment.
Well, it's going to have a very interesting ending, because I said to Andrew Pierce, who works on this programme, very firmly a couple of weeks ago, Jeremy Corbyn is going to beat the other 3 put together, and if they are stupid enough to call for a re-election, they'll find he'll win by even more. And I can point to the famous by-election, which I was in charge of in Winchester, when the Liberals beat us by 2 votes, and we demanded not a recount, we demanded a re-election. We were so angry with the Liberals. And we lost by 21,000. And that shows you exactly what will happen if Jeremy Corbyn wins and they are stupid enough to try and have new rules that change it. They'll make him an even bigger winner.
Do you think he'll be a good leader of the Labour Party?
I think he sincerely believes in all the things he says. I've no doubt about his sincerity. And of course, that we'll be stupid. We'll underestimate him. He's not a fool. He hasn't got there.
No.
And what is happening by mistake? He's been in politics in the House of Commons for 22 years. He's a capable man, and the Conservative Party would be very foolish to underestimate him. I find it hard to believe with his current policies that he's actually electable, or the Labour Party would be electable with him as leader. I think one of the strangest things that's happened is the other 3 candidates have been so uninspiring that he has leapt forward and taken the centre stage. 2 things could have happened. One, he could have failed to get those famous 3 votes. People have already forgotten you need 35 members of parliament in the Labour Party for you to be able to stand as a candidate. And 3 people decided to give him a vote because they thought it would be healthy for democracy to have the left's view fully aired, which you can't quarrel with. But those 3 people are now going to be responsible for electing the next Labour leader.
And what of the Lib Dems, we ask?
Well, they must be really broken after the next election. I'm bound to say I thought they did well in coalition, and I'm bound to say I thought the Liberals had a very rough deal in the general election. I think particular Danny Alexander was an outstanding Chief Secretary, did a first-class job, and did the best he could for a coalition government in Britain at the time, and lost his seat. So I have a great deal of sympathy with people like that. Where they will do what they always do, the Liberals. They'll build up at a local level again, which they do brilliantly. They'll start winning local councils again. They'll build up the counties and the areas again. And they will come back. It'll be a long process, but they will come back.
The interesting thing is, I was asking somebody a short while ago, because I knew a number of MPs who lost their seat, who I'd known for many, many years. Yeah. And I remember thinking, in fact, I spoke to one MP and he said he had a friend of his, and he had him crying on the telephone, because all of a sudden, you've been an MP, then all of a sudden people go, we want to go for somebody different. Even in our area, we were sort of, Twickenham was terribly Lib Dem with Vince Cable.
Vince Cable, yeah.
And Vince Cable had been there for donkey's years, and all of a sudden, completely against the odds, all of a sudden, nobody voted for Vince Cable. And you think, what do you do if you're an ex-MP and they vote you out? I mean, apart from sticking you in the House of Lords.
Well, if you don't get to the House of Lords, and 9 out of 10 don't, you're 50 years old, you have a small pension, you once had one of the most exciting jobs on earth, and you're now looking for anything you can get. And you're quite right. But that is the risk of politics. If you want to enter the House of Commons, if you wish to stand on the centre of the stage, you take with it the risk that the public will throw you out, which is their privilege because we live in a democracy. But I agree, for those people who are kicked out at the age of 50, having given 20 years, perhaps 15 years to the House of Commons, they're then frankly only trained to be members of Parliament.
Yes.
They're not very good at anything else.
No.
And a lot of them are... they're in dire straits at one level. Now, you'll hear people say, I don't care, serve them right. Those very people are people who would never consider standing even for a local council or giving service, and are happy to run members of Parliament down for the fun of it. Quite often people who don't even bother to vote.
Yes, and unfortunately that we see that more and more nowadays. People complain, say, of course it's not going to make any difference. And you think, but if everybody thought like that, we'd be in a terrible state. Of course you must get out there and vote. It's your right to go out and vote.
I think I have no time for people who tell me they don't vote.
Yeah.
If you don't vote, then I'm not interested in your opinion.
No, I agree with you. Going back to Mightier Than the Sword, book 5 in the Clifton Chronicles, I'm assuming you've started writing already.
Book 6.
You must have done.
Yes,
must have done. You're an organised man.
Pretty well finished, book 6. Line editing has to be done. That's when they check that every single thing is right. And having many, many years ago suggested that the capital of Switzerland was Geneva, and the amount of emails, what letters we got in those days, you always make a mistake.
Yes.
Always make. I think in any book you picked up, any novel you picked up, you'd find
There'll
2 or 3
be a mistake.
mistakes. It's just so easy to do. And when you're reading quickly, when you're in the final draft, you read over mistakes. You need a brand new pair of eyes to look at them and pick them up. And even they miss some.
Yes, I've seen mistakes. Do you storyboard?
No, I do not.
Gosh.
I rise in the morning, I put my feet on the ground, I pick up the pen and say, let's go. Storyboard is putting things out in an order, you know where you're going. I'll tell you what happened. I was up at 6 o'clock. I'll tell you what happened this morning. I was up at 6 o'clock this morning writing, and just after 7 a twist came that I could never have dreamed of. If I'd had a storyboard, it would have sent me in the direction that it was instructing me to send, because I never know what's happening 3 pages ahead. I never know where the story is going to go. It can suddenly shoot off in a different direction. And just after 7 o'clock this morning was perhaps the biggest twist I've ever known in any book I've ever written. I dropped my pen and thought, it can't happen. It can't be right, can that? My God, it works. And that can only come from doing it that morning.
It surprises you as much as us then.
Oh, if you can surprise yourself, you're going to surprise the reader. I always say, if I don't know the ending, how can you possibly know the ending? I'd hate to have a letter saying, I worked out on page 73, Geoffrey, exactly where this book was going. I've never had that.
It's not an Agatha
Christie. Because
Christie.
I don't know where it's going. And if I don't know where it's going, how can anyone know we're mightier than the sword?
And does
or
it just
beginning
flow?
of-
Does it just, you sit there, you wake up in the morning, you do your first thing, you have a cup of tea or whatever, and then and you start seeing it, and then it just goes.
You pick the pen up, you write the first sentence, and the first sentence this morning was, "Can you lend me £10,000? I'm in a rather desperate situation." But I didn't know the second sentence. So I wrote the second sentence, "But you know only too well that I've no money at all." "Yes, but you have the right sort of contacts and friends." And then it just comes. It just comes. And then we got to the end of
I'm going to
this.
check book 6 for
and
this.
And then the twist came. I just hadn't expected it at all. The
Wow.
twist was exactly 180 degrees away from where I thought I was going.
When you're doing the books, can you read anything else, or do you worry it might influence you?
I don't like reading when I'm writing. When I'm not writing, I read a lot. I'll read a book a week. I'm reading all the time and loving it. Classics sometimes, because I want to see the construction of work. Popular thrillers to see the speed and the twists. All the time, non-stop. I'll read 30 or 40 books a year and then recommend to other people the ones I've read and think they should look at. And I'm listening to recommendations the whole time. Someone will say to me, "Have you read this, Geoffrey?" "No, it's absolutely wonderful." And so I'm being influenced the whole time by other people telling me what to read.
You're in a very good position, aren't you, at the moment? You have enough money to sit back and enjoy. You have a lovely flat with the best views in London, I suspect. In fact, I think they are. Every time I go past that, I always say to people, "Geoffrey Archer lives there."
Yeah,
I think you're as well known as some of the other landmarks around there. I think mainly because every time journalists go there, they always say it is like going into an art gallery. You still have all your art.
It is a lovely home.
And I always remember you
And
actually
we're
saying
very
something
privileged.
years and years ago when people talked about your art. You said, "Yes, but I buy if I like something. I'm not buying as an investment. I'm buying if I like," and that's how you should buy art.
Well, and the proof now is that here I am at 75 and I'm not a seller. They're still on the wall.
Still like them.
If I was a dealer or buying for profit, that would be the case. The truth is that half of my paintings have doubled, tripled, quadrupled. The other half have stayed roughly the same. But I love them equally. I mean, they're like old friends now. So when I see something I fall in love with, assuming I can afford it, I will buy it. The trouble now is Mary gets very cross with me because there are no places on the wall. So if you put one up, you've got to take one down. But luckily I've got two sons who are only too happy to take them away.
You see, we knew there was an answer to it. Geoffrey Archer's Mightier Than the Sword is published now in paperback. A pleasure always. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Believe it or not now, the lovely Belinda Carlisle has the box set of the CD singles, which is running 86 up to 2014. Hello.
I know.
Can you believe it?
They said there's 130 cuts.
There are 20...